She wasn't supposed to survive the night. That's what everyone whispered in the back rooms of Seoul's most dangerous district. That's what the old women muttered as they swept the streets at dawn, pretending not to see the blood being washed from the cobblestones. That's what Min Yoongi himself believed when he pulled her from the wreckage of her father's burned restaurant, her dark skin covered in ash, her eyes burning with something that looked less like fear and more like fury. But Zara Okonkwo didn't die that night. And that became his first mistake. Let me take you back 3 months before the fire. Back when Zara still believed in things like justice and fresh starts and the possibility that moving halfway across the world might actually save her family. She'd arrived in Seoul with her father and younger brother on a Tuesday in May, when the cherry blossoms had just finished falling and the city smelled like rain and grilled meat and endless possibility. Her father had scraped together everything they had to open a small Nigerian restaurant in Itaewon, a neighborhood where diversity wasn't just tolerated, but expected. A place where they could build something new after Lagos became too dangerous, after the debts got too deep, after her mother's grave became just another reason to leave. What Zara didn't know was that her father's debts had followed them across continents like shadows stretching at sunset. She didn't know that the money he'd borrowed to start over came with interest rates that would break bones and burn buildings. She didn't know that in Seoul's underworld, there were organizations that made the Lagos gangs look like schoolyard bullies. She didn't know about the Jade Dragons. She definitely didn't know about Min Yoongi. Yoongi controlled everything from Itaewon to Gangnam with the kind of quiet efficiency that made people nervous. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to make threats. One look from those cold, calculating eyes and grown men remembered they had somewhere else to be. At 29, he turned his family's small protection racket into an empire that touched everything from real estate to entertainment to the kind of import-export business that customs agents were paid handsomely to ignore. He wore expensive suits that fit like they were born on his body. He drove cars that cost more than most people's apartments. He moved through Seoul like he owned it because in every way that mattered he did. Their first meeting happened on a Wednesday. Zara was carrying boxes of supplies into the restaurant, her natural hair pulled back in a scarf, sweat making her skin glow under the afternoon sun. She just set down a crate of palm oil when she felt it, that prickle on the back of her neck that told her she was being watched. She turned and there he was, standing across the street like he'd materialized from the heat shimmer rising off the pavement. Even from a distance she could feel the weight of his attention. He was beautiful in that dangerous way that made smart people cross to the other side of the street. Sharp features, pale skin, hair swept back to reveal a face that could have been carved from marble, if marble could look at you like it was deciding whether you were worth the effort of acknowledging. Their eyes met. Something electric passed between them. Something that tasted like recognition even though they'd never seen each other before. He tilted his head slightly, studying her the way a collector might study a painting he was considering acquiring. Then he smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, the kind that made promises his words wouldn't have to. Zara did something that surprised them both. She smiled back. Not a friendly smile. Not an invitation. A challenge. A smile that said, I see you seeing me, and I'm not impressed. Then she picked up her box and walked inside without looking back. Don't subscribe if you're looking for simple love stories where good people meet good people, and everything works out fine. This isn't that. But if you want to know what happens when obsession meets resistance, when power meets pride, when two people who should never touch each other can't seem to stay apart, maybe you're in the right place. The choice is yours. Yoongi stood on that street corner for 5 minutes after she disappeared inside. 5 minutes of absolute stillness while his second-in-command, Kim Tae-young, waited patiently beside him. Tae-young had worked for Yoongi long enough to recognize the signs. The slight narrowing of his boss's eyes. The way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The subtle shift in his posture that meant something had just become personal. Who is she? Yoongi asked quietly. Tae-young already had the answer ready. He always did. Zara Okonkwo. Arrived from Nigeria 2 weeks ago with her father and brother. The father is Paul Okonkwo. He borrowed 500 million won from the Chun family to start the restaurant. Yoongi's expression didn't change, but Tae-young saw his fingers curl slightly. The Chun family. Chinese syndicate operating out of Incheon. Not technically Yoongi's territory, but close enough to be problematic. Close enough to be disrespectful. They know this is my area, Yoongi said. It wasn't a question. They know. When is the payment due? End of the month. The father thinks he has time. He doesn't understand how things work here. Yoongi was quiet for a moment, still looking at the restaurant's closed door like he could see through it to the woman inside. Find out everything about her. Everything. 3 days later, Zara's brother Samuel went missing. He was 16, tall for his age, with his sister's same striking features and their father's easy smile. He'd gone to buy ingredients from the market in Dongdaemun and never came back. His phone went straight to voicemail. The shop owners who usually chatted with him claimed they hadn't seen him. It was like he'd been erased from the city. Zara spent that night walking Seoul streets calling his name until her voice went raw. Her father sat in the restaurant with his head in his hands, making phone calls to people who didn't answer, trying to report it to police who took notes with expressions that said this happens more than you'd think. It was 2 in the morning when the black Mercedes pulled up outside. Zara was sitting on the curb, her phone clutched in both hands, tears dried in tracks down her face. She looked up as the car door opened and Min Yoongi stepped out, immaculate in a black suit despite the hour. He stood over her, blocking out the streetlight, turning her world into shadow. "I know where your brother is," he said. She was on her feet in an instant, exhaustion forgotten. "Where? Is he hurt? I need to." "He's fine. Scared but fine." Yoongi's voice was calm, almost gentle. "The Chun family is holding him. Insurance. They want to make sure your father pays what he owes." The world tilted. Zara had to lock her knees to keep standing. "My father. What did he do?" "He borrowed money from very dangerous people. Money that's now past due." Yoongi took a step closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle. Close enough to see that his eyes weren't entirely cold. There was something else there. Something hungry. The interest alone would take you 5 years to pay back, even if business is good. Which it won't be. Once word gets out that you're in debt to the Chinese syndicates. "Why are you telling me this?" Her voice shook but held. "What do you want?" There it was. That small smile again. "Your father borrowed from the wrong people. But this is my territory. I don't appreciate outsiders conducting business in my streets without permission. It's disrespectful." "So this is about territory?" She felt anger cutting through her fear like a blade. "My brother is collateral damage in some gang rivalry? Your brother is leverage. But he doesn't have to be." Yoongi reached into his jacket and Zara tensed, but he only pulled out a business card. Thick, expensive paper. A phone number embossed in silver. "I can get him back. Tonight. I can also make your father's debt disappear. Completely." She stared at the card like it might bite her. "What's the price?" "You work for me." The words hung in the humid night air. Somewhere in the distance a siren wailed. A drunk couple stumbled past laughing, living in a version of Seoul where these conversations didn't happen. "Work for you how?" Zara asked carefully. "I need someone who can move between worlds. Someone who doesn't look like they belong to me. Someone smart enough to be useful and unknown enough to be invisible." He paused, studying her face. "Someone who has everything to lose so I know they won't betray me. You want me to be a spy. I want you to be my eyes and ears in places I can't go. My translator in rooms that go quiet when I enter. My access to communities that my face closes like doors." He took another step closer. They were almost touching now. She could feel the heat coming off his body. 6 months. "You work for me for 6 months, do exactly what I tell you when I tell you, no questions. At the end, your father's debt is cleared, your family is protected, and you walk away clean. And if I say no?" His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Then your brother comes home in pieces. Your father's restaurant burns. And you spend the rest of your short life learning what happens to people who waste my time." She wanted to spit in his face. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream for help even though she knew no one would come. Instead she held out her hand. "I want Samuel back first. Before I agree to anything, I see my brother safe." Yoongi looked at her outstretched hand for a long moment. Then he took it. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not crushing. "Done. Get in the car. Now. You don't trust me, I don't trust you. We fix that by starting immediately. Unless you'd rather wait until morning and hope the Chun family doesn't decide your brother knows too much. She got in the car. The Mercedes smelled like leather and danger. Taeyoung was driving, his eyes meeting Zara's in the rearview mirror with an expression she couldn't read. Yoongi sat beside her in the back, close enough that their thighs almost touched every time the car turned. He made a phone call in rapid Korean too fast for her limited vocabulary to follow. Whoever was on the other end didn't argue. They drove for 20 minutes, leaving the bright lights of central Seoul for industrial areas where buildings crouched in darkness like sleeping beasts. Finally, they pulled up to a warehouse that looked abandoned except for the two men standing guard outside. The guards recognized the car and stepped aside immediately. Inside, the warehouse was mostly empty except for some crates stacked against the far wall, and a single chair in the center of the space. Samuel was tied to that chair, his head down, his shirt torn. When he heard footsteps, he looked up. His face was bruised but his eyes were clear. "Zara!" His voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" She started to run to him but Yoongi's hand closed around her wrist, holding her back with effortless strength. "Wait!" 3 men emerged from the shadows. Chinese, wearing the kind of cheap suits that said they were muscle, not management. The one in front had a scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw. He looked at Yoongi with barely concealed hostility. "Min Yoongi," the scarred man said in accented Korean. "You have no business here. The boy's father owes us money. This is between us and the Okonkwos." "Paul Okonkwo operates a business in my territory," Yoongi replied calmly. "That makes it my business. Tell your boss that any debts in my district go through me. The father's obligation to you is purchased. I'm paying what he owes." Scarface sneered. "The boss won't like that. We don't need your money. You misunderstand. I'm not asking permission." Yoongi's voice dropped lower, colder. "Taeyoung." Before Zara could process what was happening, Taeyoung had moved. He was suddenly behind one of the Chinese men, a knife pressed to the man's throat. The other 2 reached for their guns but froze when 5 more of Yoongi's men seemed to materialize from nowhere, weapons already drawn. It had taken 3 seconds. 3 seconds to completely flip the power dynamic in the room. Yoongi's grip on Zara's wrist never wavered. He kept his eyes on Scarface. "You have 2 choices. Take the money, release the boy, and go back to Incheon with a message for your boss that this territory is closed to Chun family business. Or refuse and I send you back in pieces while I keep the boy anyway. Your people can explain to your boss how you lost both the money and the leverage." The scarred man's jaw worked. Pride warred with self-preservation. Finally, he jerked his head to one of his companions, who moved to cut Samuel free. "This isn't over," Scarface said. "It is," Yoongi corrected. "You just don't know it yet." Samuel stumbled toward Zara, and this time Yoongi released her wrist. She caught her brother, feeling him shake against her, smelling the fear sweat on his skin. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're okay now." Over Samuel's shoulder, she watched Yoongi pull out a sleek leather envelope and toss it to Scarface. The man caught it, opened it enough to see the cash inside. His expression darkened but he nodded curtly. "Tell your sister," Scarface said to Samuel in English, his eyes on Zara, "that she just made a deal with the devil. Min Yoongi doesn't help people. He owns them." Then the Chinese men were gone, melting into the shadows as quickly as Yoongi's people had appeared. In seconds it was just Zara, Samuel, Yoongi, and Taeyoung in the vast empty warehouse. "Get him home," Yoongi said quietly. "Be back here tomorrow night. 8 p.m. Don't be late." Samuel was shaking his head before Zara could answer. "No. Zara, whatever he's asking you to do is none of your concern," Yoongi interrupted. His eyes never left Zara's face. "Your sister made a deal. She's going to honor it. Unless she wants me to go collect from your father instead." Zara felt something cold settle in her stomach. "I'll be here. Good girl." The words should have been condescending. Instead they felt like a caress, like a promise, like a threat, like the beginning of something that would either save her or destroy her completely. They left Samuel with their father and told him a sanitized version of the story, that some men had grabbed him as a warning about the debt, that they'd let him go after getting their message across, that everything was fine now. Paul Okonkwo held his son and wept and swore he'd find a way to pay back everyone. Zara didn't tell him she'd already paid. She didn't tell him the currency wasn't money. The next night, she showed up at the warehouse at 7:45. Yoongi was already there, standing in a pool of light from an overhead bulb, looking at his phone. He was dressed more casually than before. Black jeans, black t-shirt, leather jacket, but somehow it made him more dangerous, not less. Like he'd taken off the civilized costume and was showing her what lay underneath. He looked up as she approached. Punctual. I like that. What do you want me to do? Direct. I like that too. He pocketed his phone. There's a club in Hongdae. Western place, lots of expats, lots of drugs, lots of information. The owner thinks he's independent, but he buys his product from a supplier who buys from me. 3 levels removed, so he feels safe. Lately he's been skimming, taking more than he pays for, cutting it with cheap fillers, pocketing the difference. And you want me to? Confirm it. The owner is a British man named James Carter. He has a type, tall, beautiful, exotic. You're going to walk into that club, catch his attention, and get close enough to see his operation. I need to know how much he's stealing, who he's working with, and whether he's stupid enough to think I won't find out. Zara's throat felt dry. You want me to seduce him? I want you to let him think he's seducing you. There's a difference. Yoongi reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black box. You'll wear this. It's a camera and microphone. Records everything. Taeyong will be nearby in case things get out of hand. In case he tries to. He won't get the chance. Something dangerous flashed in Yoongi's eyes. You're mine for 6 months. That means no one touches you without my permission. Not Carter, not anyone. You get into trouble, you signal Taeyong and he pulls you out. Understood. She should have felt relieved. Instead she felt owned. What's the signal? You touch your left ear 3 times. Taeyong comes in, you leave with him. Carter thinks you got a call about a family emergency or whatever story you want to tell. Simple. Nothing about this was simple. But she'd made a deal. Yoongi stepped closer, reaching up to brush a strand of her hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her skin, and she felt her breath catch. You're scared, he observed quietly. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. But don't let him see it. Men like Carter, they smell fear like blood in water. I'm not scared of Carter. No. His hand moved to cup her jaw, tilting her face up to his. What are you scared of? You, she wanted to say. I'm scared of you and what you make me feel. I'm scared that this is only the first step into darkness and by the end of 6 months I won't recognize myself. I'm scared that you look at me like I'm something precious and dangerous, and you can't decide which excites you more. I'm scared I'll fail, she said instead. He smiled. A real smile this time, one that transformed his entire face. You won't. You're stronger than you think. Stronger than your father, stronger than your fear. I saw it that first day, the way you looked at me. Like you wanted to burn me down just to watch the flames. Maybe I did. Maybe you still do. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and she felt heat pool low in her stomach. That's what makes this interesting. Then he stepped back, breaking the moment like snapping a wire. Taeyong will pick you up tomorrow at 9. Wear something that will make Carter forget his own name. Questions. She had 1,000 questions. She asked the only one that mattered. Why me? You could have sent someone who already works for you. Someone who knows what they're doing. Because everyone who works for me is known. Their faces, their methods, their connections. You're new. You're unexpected. You're a piece on the board that no one sees coming. He paused. And because when I look at you, I see someone who would burn the whole world down to save their family. That kind of loyalty can't be bought. It can only be leveraged. She left the warehouse feeling like she just signed away more than 6 months. Like she'd signed away pieces of herself she didn't even know she had. The next 2 days were a crash course in becoming someone else. Taeyong took her to boutiques where dresses cost more than her family's monthly rent. He introduced her to a woman named Min Yoongi who did her makeup with the precision of an artist, transforming her already striking features into something that could stop traffic. He taught her how to hold herself, how to walk into a room like she owned it, how to let men think they were hunting when really she was the trap. You're a natural, Min Yoongi said, studying Zara in the mirror. You have that thing, you know? That presence. Like you're not quite tame. Zara looked at her reflection and barely recognized herself. The dress was deep burgundy, clinging to her curves like it had been painted on. Her natural hair was styled in an elaborate updo that probably took years off Min Yoongi's life. Her lips were wine dark, her eyes smoky and dangerous. She looked like someone who belonged in Yoongi's world. That was what scared her most. Club Exodus was exactly what Yoongi had described. Western music, mostly foreign faces. Enough darkness and flashing lights to hide all kinds of sins. Zara walked in at 10 p.m. with Taeyoung 3 steps behind, far enough to seem separate but close enough to reach her if needed. The tiny camera was pinned inside her dress, no bigger than a button, transmitting everything to Yoongi's people. She barely made it to the bar when she felt it. That weight of attention she was learning to recognize. James Carter was watching her from the VIP section, his pale British face flushed with alcohol and interest. He was handsome in a dissolute way, with messy blonde hair and the kind of expensive casual clothes that screamed money. He came to her. They always did when you stopped chasing. "I haven't seen you here before," he said in English, sliding onto the bar stool beside her. "And trust me, I would have remembered." Zara gave him a slow smile, the one Min Yoongi had taught her. "First time. A friend recommended it." "Then your friend has excellent taste. I'm James. I own this place." "Zara." She let her accent curl around the word, made it exotic, made it intriguing. "You own it? That's impressive." He preened like she'd just crowned him king. "It's not easy running a business in Seoul. Lots of complications. Lots of people who want their cut. But I've learned how to navigate the system." "I bet you have." She accepted the drink he ordered for her, something expensive and strong. Must take a special kind of person to succeed here. 3 hours later she'd seen everything she needed to. Carter was drunk enough to be careless, arrogant enough to brag, and stupid enough to think she was just another pretty face impressed by his success. He'd taken her on a tour of the club, including the back office where his safe sat open, stacks of product and cash visible. He'd introduced her to his assistant manager, a nervous Korean man who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. He'd even mentioned his supplier's supplier, not knowing he was talking about Yoongi's distribution network. "You should come back tomorrow night," Carter said, his hand on her lower back, proprietary and presumptuous. "Private party. Very exclusive. I think you'd enjoy it." "Maybe I will," Zara said, even as her skin crawled from his touch. His hand slid lower. "Or you could come back to my place now. I've got a view of the river that has to be seen to be believed." She was reaching for her ear when Taeyoung materialized beside them, phone in hand, expression apologetic. "Miss Okonkwo? I'm sorry to interrupt, but your brother, Samuel." She turned away from Carter immediately, genuine worry mixing with relief. "What happened?" "He's asking for you. Says it's urgent." She didn't have to fake the concern on her face as she turned back to Carter. "I'm so sorry, family emergency. Can I take a rain check on that private party?" Carter looked disappointed but nodded, already eyeing another woman across the room. "Yeah, sure. You have my number, right?" She had his number in more ways than one. Outside in the cool night air, she finally let herself breathe. Taeyoung guided her to a different car than usual, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. She got in the back seat and found Yoongi waiting there, a laptop open in front of him, footage from her camera playing on the screen. "You did well," he said without looking up. "Better than expected. He's stealing about 30% more than he's paying for," Zara said, her voice flat. "Cutting it with caffeine and baby laxative. The manager knows but is too scared to say anything. Carter thinks he's untouchable, because his uncle is some British politician with connections." Now Yoongi looked up, something like pride flickering across his face. "You got all that in 3 hours? He wanted to impress me. Men always tell you their secrets when they're trying to get you into bed." "Did he touch you?" The question came out sharper than his previous words. "My back. My arm. Nothing I couldn't handle." Yoongi's jaw tightened. "Next time someone touches you without permission, you don't wait to signal. You break their hand first, signal second. I thought the point was to stay undercover. The point is that you're under my protection. That means something. It means no one treats you like property except..." He stopped, the sentence hanging unfinished in the air between them. Except you. Zara finished for him. Their eyes met. The laptop light cast half his face in shadow, making him look like something from a beautiful nightmare. Except me, he agreed quietly. The tension in the car was suffocating. Zara felt like the air itself had become charged with something electric, something that would spark and burn if either of them moved wrong. What happens to Carter? He gets a visit. A reminder that theft has consequences. Whether he survives that reminder depends on how well he listens. Yoongi closed the laptop. You're done for tonight. Taeyoung will take you home. That's it? One job and I'm done. For tonight. I have other work for you. But right now you need rest. You did something difficult today. Let yourself feel it. She wanted to argue. She wanted to prove she was tougher than he thought, that she didn't need rest or care, or whatever this unexpected gentleness was. Instead, she found herself asking, do you feel it? When you do difficult things. He considered the question seriously. I used to. Then I did so many difficult things that they became easy. That's when you know you've lost something important. What did you lose? The ability to be anyone other than this. He gestured at himself, at the expensive car, at the laptop full of surveillance footage. My father built this organization. My mother wanted me to be a doctor. I became what the family needed instead of what I wanted. Now I don't even remember what I wanted. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. The most human. And somehow that made him more dangerous, not less, because it meant he wasn't just a monster. He was a person who'd chosen to become monstrous. That was so much worse. I should go, Zara said. He nodded but didn't move to let her leave. Tomorrow there's a meeting. Textile importers from Busan, except they don't actually import textiles. They move weapons through the port and sell them to whoever pays. I need someone to translate Korean to English for a potential buyer. You speak Korean well enough. Basic conversation. Not business terms. You'll have an earpiece. I'll feed you the words you need. His eyes traced her face like he was memorizing it. This one is dangerous. The buyers are Russian. They don't trust easily, and they have very short tempers. Will you be there? Close by. If it goes wrong, I'll know. She should have been terrified. Maybe she was. But there was something else too, something that felt uncomfortably like excitement. Like she was finally doing something that mattered, even if it mattered in all the wrong ways. Don't subscribe if you're looking for heroes who make good choices. Nobody here is making good choices. But if you want to watch someone discover they're capable of darkness they never knew existed, if you want to see what happens when survival becomes seduction, becomes something even more dangerous. Well, you're already this deep. Might as well see how dark it gets. Up to you though. The weapons deal happened in a warehouse by the Han River. One of those anonymous industrial spaces that dot Seoul's outskirts like missing teeth. Zara arrived with Taeyoung, wearing business casual clothes and a wire so thin she couldn't feel it. The earpiece was even smaller, nestled in her ear canal like a secret. The Russians arrived exactly on time. 3 men in their 40s with faces that had seen violence and dealt it back with interest. The Busan suppliers were nervous, which made everyone nervous. Zara stood to the side, translating technical specifications for weapons she'd never heard of. Her voice steady even as her hands wanted to shake. Tell them the modified AK-47s come in shipments of 50. Yoongi's voice whispered in her ear, calm as if he were ordering coffee. Price is negotiable based on volume. She translated. The lead Russian, a man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, nodded approvingly. Good. And the shipment route? Through Busan port, hidden in textile rolls. Customs are paid off through the 3rd level. Safe passage guaranteed. It went smoothly until it didn't. One of the Busan men, a nervous younger guy who'd been sweating since the meeting started, suddenly pulled a gun. I know who you are, he said in Korean, his weapon pointed at the lead Russian. You killed my brother in Vladivostok. You think I wouldn't find out? The room exploded into action. The other Russians drew weapons. The remaining Busan supplier dove for cover. Zara froze for one critical second, her mind blanking with fear, and then Yoongi's voice was in her ear, sharp and commanding. Down! Get down now! She dropped behind a crate just as gunfire erupted. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Nothing like movies, all concussive force and the smell of cordite. She pressed herself against the concrete floor, hands over her head, and tried to remember how to breathe. Then there was a hand on her shoulder pulling her up. She looked up into Yoongi's face, his expression carved from ice and fury. "Run," he said simply. But she couldn't run because the nervous Busan man was on the ground, bleeding from his stomach, and he was looking at her with dying eyes. "Help me," he choked out in Korean. "Please." Zara moved without thinking, pressing her hands against his wound even though she could feel his life pulsing out between her fingers. "Stay with me," she said in Korean, in English, in any language that might keep him conscious. "Someone call an ambulance." No ambulances. The lead Russian stood over them, his gun pointed at the dying man's head. He broke the deal. He dies. That's business. "He's already dying," Zara heard herself say. "You don't need to." The Russian looked at her with eyes as cold as Siberian winter. "You're the translator, yes? Stick to translating." She felt Yoongi tense beside her, felt him calculating distances and angles, and whether he could draw and fire before the Russian could pull his trigger. The math must not have worked because he stayed still, one hand on Zara's shoulder in a grip that bordered on painful. "She's new," Yoongi said in perfect Russian, his voice carrying an authority that made even the armed man pause. "She doesn't understand how these things work. It won't happen again." The Russian considered this. Then he lowered his gun, stepped over the dying man like he was a crack in the pavement, and walked out. His companions followed. The remaining Busan supplier was already gone, fled before the shooting stopped. It was just the three of them now, Zara, Yoongi, and the man bleeding out on the warehouse floor. She kept pressure on his wound even though she knew it was useless. "We have to help him." "He's dead already," Yoongi said quietly. "All we can do now is decide if you want to be here when someone finds the body. I can't just leave him." "Yes, you can. Because if you stay, you become a witness. If you're a witness, you become a target. And I made you a promise that your family would be protected. I can't keep that promise if you're in a police station explaining how you came to be at an illegal weapons deal." The man on the floor had stopped breathing. His eyes were still open, still looking at nothing. Zara's hands were covered in his blood, sticky and cooling. She stood up on shaking legs, and this time when Yoongi guided her toward the exit, she didn't resist. They didn't speak in the car. Taeyong drove while Yoongi sat in the back with Zara, a towel in his hands, carefully cleaning the blood from her fingers. His touch was gentle, almost tender, completely at odds with the violence they just witnessed. "You tried to save him," he said finally. "I failed. You're not supposed to save people in this world. You're supposed to survive them." He finished with one hand and started on the other. "But you tried anyway. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Which do you think it is?" He looked up, meeting her eyes. "I think you're going to break my heart, Zara Okonkwo. And I think I'm going to let you." The confession hung between them like smoke. She should have pulled away. Should have reminded him this was business, a transaction 6 months and done. Instead, she found herself leaning closer, drawn by something stronger than sense. "You don't have a heart to break," she whispered. "I didn't. Then you looked at me like I was something worth burning down." His hand moved from her fingers to her wrist, feeling her pulse race. "Now I'm not sure what I have. But I know I want you to break it anyway." She kissed him. Or he kissed her. Later, she wouldn't be able to say who moved first. Only that suddenly his mouth was on hers, and she was falling into darkness that tasted like mint and smoke and danger. He kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus, total control, and an intensity that made her feel like she was the only thing in his world that mattered. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she could see Taeyong's eyes in the rearview mirror, carefully studying the road like he hadn't just witnessed his boss crossing every professional line he'd ever drawn. "This changes things," Yoongi said, his forehead resting against hers. "Does it?" "It shouldn't. But it does." He pulled back, and the loss of his warmth felt like punishment. 6 months. That's what we agreed. To the end you walk away. This doesn't change that. "I don't want it to change that," Zara lied. They both knew she was lying. The truth was written in the way her heart was still hammering against her ribs. In the way his hand lingered on her wrist like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. In the way Taeyong was driving slower than necessary, giving them time before reality reasserted itself. I should take you home, Yoongi said. You should. Neither of them moved. Finally, it was Taeyong who broke the moment. Boss, we have a problem. Yoongi's expression shuddered immediately, warmth replaced by cold calculation. Talk. The Chun family. They're not happy about losing the Okonkwo debt. 3 of their men just hit one of our clubs in Gangnam, beat the manager, took the week's receipts, left a message carved into the bar. What message? Min Yoongi doesn't own Seoul yet. Zara felt Yoongi's hand tighten on her wrist before he carefully released her. When he spoke, his voice was soft and lethal. Take Zara home. Then gather everyone. I want every captain, every lieutenant, everyone who matters. We're having a meeting. What are you going to do? Zara asked. He looked at her with eyes that had gone empty of everything except purpose. I'm going to remind the Chun family why they should be afraid of me. I'm going to make them regret they ever heard your brother's name. He paused. And then I'm going to burn their organization to the ground so thoroughly that 20 years from now, people will still tell stories about what happens when you disrespect me in my own city. This was the man the streets whispered about. This was the monster behind the beautiful face. She should have been horrified. Instead, some dark part of her felt protected. Safe. Like she'd unleashed something terrible on her behalf and it felt good. I'm coming with you, she said. No. You said I work for you for 6 months. That means I go where you go. That means you do what I tell you. His voice had edges now sharp enough to cut. And I'm telling you to go home, lock your door, and stay there until I come get you. Why? Because you're afraid I'll get hurt? Or because you're afraid I'll see what you really are? The question landed like a blow. Yoongi stared at her for a long moment, something painful flickering across his features. You already know what I am. You knew the moment you got in my car. The question is whether you can live with it. The question, Zara corrected, is whether you can live with someone who actually sees you. Taeyong pulled up outside her father's restaurant. The lights were off upstairs where the apartment sat above the kitchen. Her family was sleeping, safe and oblivious to the violence swirling around them. That safety had been purchased with Zara's 6 months, with her willing descent into Yoongi's world. She got out of the car but leaned back through the open door. When this is over, when you've done what you're going to do, come find me. Tell me about it. Don't make me read about it in the news like I'm not part of this. You're not part of this, Yoongi said. You work for me. That's different. Is it? Because 5 minutes ago your tongue was in my mouth and your hand was on my. Zara. Her name was a warning and a plea. Go inside. Lock the door. I'll come tomorrow. She wanted to argue. Wanted to push until he admitted that something had shifted between them. That she wasn't just an asset anymore. But Taeyong was watching with worried eyes, and she could see the tension in Yoongi's shoulders that said he was barely holding himself together. So she went inside. Locked the door. Listened to the Mercedes drive away, and wondered if she just made the biggest mistake of her life, by falling for the most dangerous man in Seoul. She couldn't sleep. She lay in her small bedroom, staring at the ceiling, her hands still smelling faintly of another man's blood despite scrubbing them raw. At 2 a.m. her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello. It's me. Yoongi's voice was rougher than usual, hoarse like he'd been shouting. Are you awake? Obviously. Can you come downstairs? I'm outside. She looked out her window. The Mercedes was parked across the street, dark and silent. She pulled on jeans and a sweater and crept downstairs, careful not to wake her father or Samuel. Outside, the Seoul night was humid and still, the kind of weather that promised storms. Yoongi was leaning against the car, and even from a distance she could see the blood on his white shirt. Not his blood, she realized as she got closer. Someone else's. A lot of someone else's. You're hurt, she said, reaching for him. He caught her hands. Not my blood. I'm fine. You don't look fine. No. I suppose I don't. He studied her face in the streetlight. I did what I said I would. The Chun family's operations in Seoul are finished. Their clubs are closed. Their warehouses are empty. Their leadership is. He trailed off and she didn't need him to finish. It's done. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked me to. Because you said not to make you read about it in the news. He pulled her closer, and she could smell smoke and violence on him. Because I wanted you to hear it from me before you hear it from anyone else. How many? How many what? How many people died tonight? He was quiet for a long moment. 4. Maybe 5 if the last one doesn't make it. She should have pulled away. Should have run back inside and locked the door and never looked at him again. Instead, she rested her head against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her ear. Are you okay? The question seemed to surprise him. Why would you ask me that? Because you're covered in blood and standing outside my apartment at 2 in the morning like you need something you can't name. So I'm asking, are you okay? His arms came around her, holding her tight enough to hurt. No, I'm not. But I will be. They stood like that for a long time, while Seoul slept around them and the violence of the night settled into the cracks of the city like rain. Finally, Yoongi pulled back enough to look down at her. I can't do this. Do what? Feel this way about you. Want you the way I want you. It makes me weak. It makes me make mistakes. Tonight, I almost got Taeyong killed because I was thinking about you instead of watching my back. Taeyong is fine. You're fine. This time. What about next time? What about the time after that? His hands came up to frame her face. You're supposed to work for me for 6 months and then leave. That's the deal. But I look at you and I want to keep you. I want to chain you to me and never let you go, and that's fucked up, Zara. That's so fucked up. Yes, she agreed softly. It is. So tell me to leave. Tell me this was a mistake. Tell me you want out of the deal and I'll let you go. Your family's debt is cleared anyway. Samuel is safe. You can walk away right now. It was an escape hatch. A clean exit. She could go back to her life, to her family, to some version of normal that didn't include blood and violence and men who kissed like they were drowning. No, she said. No. I'm not leaving. I made a deal. 6 months. She pulled his face down to hers, her lips a breath away from his. And maybe I want to be kept. Maybe I want to see how dark this goes. Maybe I'm just as fucked up as you are. He kissed her like she was the last thing he'd ever taste. Like she was salvation and damnation wrapped in skin. She kissed him back and didn't think about the blood on his shirt, or the death on his hands, or the fact that she was falling in love with a monster. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. Go inside, Yoongi said roughly. Before I do something we'll both regret. Like what? Like take you back to my place and not let you leave for a week. The image sent heat racing through her body. Would that be so bad? Yes. Because your father would notice. Because your brother would worry. Because as much as I want you, I need you safe more. He stepped back, putting distance between them. 6 months. We have time. Do we? Because it feels like every day in your world is borrowed time. He smiled, sad and knowing. Then we'll make every day count. She went back inside, but this time when she lay in bed, she didn't think about the blood on her hands from the dying man. She thought about the blood on Yoongi's shirt. About the 4 or 5 people who died tonight because of her brother, because of her father's debt, because of her. She was becoming complicit. She was becoming part of the machine she'd once wanted to burn down. And the most terrifying part was that she didn't hate it. 3 weeks passed. Zara worked for Yoongi in the shadows while maintaining the facade of helping in her father's restaurant during the day. She translated at meetings with Russian arms dealers and Japanese Yakuza representatives. She infiltrated a money laundering operation run through a chain of dry cleaners. She learned to read the subtle signals in Yoongi's world. Who was lying, who was dangerous, who was weak enough to be leveraged. She was good at it. Better than she wanted to be. And every night, Yoongi found reasons to see her. Sometimes it was business, debriefing after a job, planning the next move. Sometimes it was less explainable. He'd show up at midnight with takeout from her favorite Nigerian place that he'd somehow discovered. He'd take her driving through Seoul's empty streets while the city slept. He'd sit on the floor of her bedroom while she told him stories about Lagos, about her mother, about the girl she'd been before she became this. They didn't sleep together. Not yet. But the tension built like a storm waiting to break. You're playing with fire. Taeyong warned her one day when he was driving her to a meeting with the boss. You know that, right? Is that concern? I didn't think you cared. I care about him. He's different with you. Softer. That's dangerous in our world. Maybe he needs to be softer sometimes. Taeyong's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. Men like us don't get to be soft. We tried that once. It got people killed. Before she could ask what he meant, they'd arrived at the meeting location, an upscale restaurant in Gangnam where Yoongi was negotiating with a Korean politician who needed campaign funds and wasn't picky about where they came from. Zara's job was simple. Sit, look beautiful, and remind the politician that Yoongi had international connections. The meeting went smoothly until dessert, when the politician's wife showed up unexpectedly. She was elegant, perfectly put together, and her eyes went sharp when she saw Zara sitting beside Yoongi. I didn't realize you were bringing a date, she said in Korean, her smile not reaching her eyes. Miss Okonkwo is my business associate, Yoongi replied smoothly. She helps with international relations. How modern. The wife's gaze traveled over Zara like she was assessing a threat. You must be very talented to work so closely with Mr. Min. There was subtext there, layers of meaning Zara was only beginning to understand. In Korea's hierarchical society, a young foreign woman sitting at this table raised questions, implications, rumors that could damage Yoongi's carefully constructed reputation. I try to be useful, Zara said carefully. I'm sure you're very useful. The word dripped with insinuation. My husband and I were just discussing how Mr. Min has been making some bold choices lately, burning bridges with old allies, starting wars that didn't need to be started. All for what? A point of pride. The temperature in the room dropped. Yoongi's expression didn't change, but Zara felt him tense beside her. I make the choices I believe are necessary for my organization. If that makes some people uncomfortable, perhaps they should reconsider their position. The politician laughed nervously. Darling, Mr. Min knows what he's doing. We shouldn't question. I'm not questioning, his wife interrupted, her eyes never leaving Yoongi. I'm observing. And what I observe is a man who's letting personal matters affect business decisions. That's unlike you, Mr. Min. It makes me wonder what's changed. Yoongi stood, and even though the movement was controlled, there was violence in it. The meeting is over. Taeyong will see you out. We haven't finished discussing the campaign. We're finished. You'll have your funding, same terms as before. But your wife is no longer welcome at our meetings. Make sure she understands that. The politician paled. His wife's face flushed with anger, but she was smart enough to stay quiet as Taeyong escorted them out. When they were gone, Yoongi sat back down and finished his wine in one long swallow. She's right, he said quietly. I am making choices I wouldn't have made before, taking risks I should avoid. Because of me? Because of you. He looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. The Chun family situation. I could have handled it politically, made compromises. Instead, I burned them down because they dared to touch your brother. Because they made you scared. I didn't ask you to do that. I know. That's what makes it worse. You don't ask for anything. You don't demand. You just exist in my world, and suddenly I'm making decisions with my heart instead of my head. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Do you know how long it's been since I had a heart? Since I cared about anything except power and survival. Maybe that's not a bad thing. It's a terrible thing. Hearts get you killed in this business. They make you vulnerable. They give your enemies targets. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But I can't seem to stop. Can't seem to care about the danger. All I care about is that you're here and you're mine. And I'll destroy anyone who tries to change that. The possession in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it ignited something primal. I'm not yours. We have a business arrangement. Liar. He pulled her closer across the table, until their faces were inches apart. You're mine. You have been since that first day when you smiled at me like you wanted to watch me burn. And I'm yours even though I shouldn't be. Even though it's going to destroy us both. 4 months, she whispered. We still have 4 months. I know. I'm counting every day. They kissed across the table, knocking over a water glass, not caring. When they finally broke apart, Zara's lipstick was smeared and Yoongi's careful composure was shattered. He looked young, suddenly vulnerable, like the boy he must have been before this life carved him into something deadly. "Come home with me," he said. "Tonight. Let me show you where I live. Who I am when nobody's watching." Is this a good idea? Probably not. Come anyway. She did. Because she was already too far gone to refuse him anything. Because 4 months suddenly felt like not enough time. Because she was falling and there was no ground in sight, just darkness all the way down. Yoongi's apartment was in one of Seoul's most expensive buildings. A penthouse that took up the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city spread out below like a carpet of lights. The decor was minimalist, expensive, and utterly impersonal. It looked like a hotel room for someone who never stayed long enough to call anywhere home. "This is where you live?" Zara asked, walking to the windows. "This is where I sleep. Sometimes." He came up behind her, close enough that she could feel his heat. "I don't really have a home. Haven't since my mother died." "When was that?" 10 years ago. "Cancer. She made me promise I'd get out of the family business. Go to university. Become someone respectable." His reflection in the glass looked hollow. "I tried. For 2 years I tried. Then my father got sick and there was no one else to run things. So I came back. Told myself it would be temporary. That turned into a decade. Do you regret it?" "Every day. And not at all." He turned her to face him. "I regret the person I had to become. But I don't regret surviving. And I don't regret that it led me to you." She touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "What happens in 4 months? When my time is up?" "I don't know. I tell myself I'll let you go. That I'll keep my word and let you walk away clean. But I don't know if I can." His hand settled on her waist, pulling her closer. "I think I might have to keep you forever. I think I might have to make you mine in every way possible, until you can't remember what life was like before me." "That's crazy." "I know. But nothing about this has ever been sane." He kissed her neck, her jaw, the corner of her mouth. "Tell me to stop. Tell me you don't want this." She couldn't. Because she did want this, wanted him, wanted everything, even though it was wrong and dangerous and would probably end in disaster. So instead of telling him to stop, she kissed him properly, deeply, with 4 weeks of pent-up wanting behind it. They didn't make it to the bedroom. Couldn't wait that long. They ended up on the couch, then the floor, clothes scattered like casualties, skin on skin and breath on breath, and the city lights painting them in amber and shadow. He touched her like she was precious and breakable. She touched him like she wanted to leave marks, evidence, proof that this was real. Afterwards they lay tangled together on the carpet, both breathing hard, both changed. Yoongi traced patterns on her skin, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "I'm going to hell for this," he said quietly. "Because of what you do? Or because of me? Because I dragged you into my world and now I can't let you go. Because I'm selfish enough to want you even though you deserve better." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. "You should hate me. You should be planning how to disappear when your 6 months are up." "Should I?" "Yes. But I'm going to make sure you don't want to." He kissed her again, slow and deep and possessive. "I'm going to make you need me the way I need you. And I'm not sorry about it." Don't subscribe if you think love is supposed to be simple, or clean, or morally uncomplicated. This is the kind of story where everyone makes terrible choices and calls it devotion. Where protection looks like possession and obsession masquerades as destiny. If that sounds like a warning instead of an invitation. Good. You're paying attention. But you're still here, aren't you? Still watching. Still wanting to know what happens when two people who should never touch can't stop touching. So stay. Or don't. But either way, this story isn't stopping for anyone. Not even you. Zara woke up in Yoongi's bed. Silk sheets tangled around her legs. Sunlight cutting through the floor-to-ceiling windows like accusation. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then she felt the ache in her body, the pleasant soreness that came from hours of the kind of intimacy that rewrote your understanding of yourself, and everything came flooding back. She was alone. The space beside her was empty but still warm. She could hear water running in the bathroom. The sound domestic and strange in this temple to solitude Yoongi called home. She found her dress from last night draped over a chair, cleaned and pressed. Her shoes placed neatly by the door. It should have been thoughtful. Instead, it felt like evidence being handled. Like he was already trying to erase the mess they'd made. When Yoongi emerged from the bathroom, he was dressed for business. Charcoal suit, silver tie, hair slicked back. The armor was back on. The man who'd held her like she was the only real thing in his world had been replaced by Min Yoongi. Criminal overlord, cold and untouchable. "There's breakfast in the kitchen," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Taeyong will take you home when you're ready." "That's it? That's all you have to say?" Now he looked at her, and she saw the conflict written across his features. "What do you want me to say? That last night was a mistake? It wasn't. That it can't happen again? It will. That I'm sorry? I'm not. Then what's with the Ice King routine? I have a meeting in an hour. 2 organizations are on the verge of war and I need to mediate. If I don't show up perfectly controlled, perfectly cold, people will sense weakness. And weakness in my world gets you killed." She stood, wrapping the sheet around herself, suddenly feeling exposed. "So this is what it's going to be? You touch me like I'm everything when we're alone, then treat me like I'm nothing when reality intrudes." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain maybe. Or regret. "You're not nothing. You're everything. That's the problem. That's what makes this so dangerous." "For who? You? Or me? Both of us." He crossed the room, pulled her close despite his expensive suit and her makeshift sheet dress. "I'm trying to protect you. The deeper you get into my life, the more danger you're in. Last night." He stopped, jaw working. "Last night I was selfish. I took what I wanted without thinking about the cost. That's not the man I'm supposed to be. Maybe it's exactly the man you're supposed to be. Maybe you're so busy being what everyone else needs that you forgot how to be human." He kissed her forehead, gentle and sad. "I can't afford to be human. Humans have weaknesses. Humans get hurt. Humans lose the things they love. You're going to lose me anyway. In 4 months I walk away. That was the deal." "I know." His arms tightened around her. "I know." But neither of them believed it anymore. The deal had changed the moment their mouths met. The clock was still ticking down to her supposed freedom, but freedom had started to look like abandonment. Like loss. Like the end of something that felt terrifyingly close to love. Taeyong drove her home in silence. She could feel him judging her or maybe worrying about her or maybe both. Finally, as they pulled up to the restaurant, he spoke. "He's different with you. Softer. More reckless. You already told me that. I'm telling you again because it's getting worse. Yesterday, he almost walked into an ambush because he was distracted thinking about you. Last week, he turned down a lucrative deal because it would have required you to get close to a man he didn't trust not to touch you. I can handle myself. That's not the point. The point is that he's making emotional decisions. And in our world, emotional decisions are fatal." Zara turned to look at him properly. "What do you want me to do? Leave. I want you to be careful. Because if something happens to you, there's no telling what he'll become. And I've seen what Min Yoongi looks like when he stops caring about consequences. It's not pretty." She got out of the car, but his words followed her inside like ghosts. Her father was in the kitchen, prep work for the lunch rush already underway. He looked up when she entered, and she saw the question in his eyes. Where had she been all night? Who was she becoming? "I was with friends," she lied. Lost track of time. He wanted to believe her. She could see it. But there was something in her face. Some change he could sense even if he couldn't name it. "Zara. If you're in trouble. I'm not. If you need help. I don't." She softened her voice, hating the hurt in his eyes. "I promise, Papa. Everything is fine. I'm figuring things out. This city. Who I am here. Give me time." He pulled her into a hug, and she felt like a traitor. Because he thought he was holding his daughter. The girl who'd arrived in Seoul 3 months ago. Innocent and hopeful. He didn't know he was holding someone who'd spent the night in a criminal's bed. Someone who'd watched a man die and felt nothing. Someone who was falling in love with darkness and calling it destiny. "I trust you," her father said. "But I worry." "I know. I'm sorry." Samuel came down the stairs, took one look at her, and his face hardened. Can I talk to my sister? Alone. Their father left reluctantly. Samuel waited until the kitchen door swung shut before he turned on her. You're sleeping with him. Min Yoongi. The man who held me hostage. You're fucking him. Sam. Don't deny it. I can see it on your face. You're glowing like. He made a frustrated sound. How could you? After what he did. After what he is. He saved you. He only had to save me because he chose to involve himself in our lives. This is all his fault, Zara. The debt, the danger, everything. And you're thanking him for it by. He stopped, too angry to finish. She wanted to explain. Wanted to tell him it was more complicated than he understood. That Yoongi was more than what he seemed. That she'd seen glimpses of the human under the monster and couldn't unsee them. But how do you explain falling for your captor to someone who only sees the cage? I'm handling it, she said finally. Are you? Because from where I'm standing you're drowning. And you're too far gone to even realize you need saving. He was right. That was the terrifying part. She was drowning and she didn't want to be saved. She wanted to sink deeper, wanted to see how dark the water went. Wanted Yoongi's hands to be the last thing she felt before the light disappeared completely. I have 4 more months on my contract, she said, trying to sound calm. Then it's over. Then we're free. We're not free now. We're owned. And you're acting like that's love. He left before she could respond. Left her standing in the restaurant surrounded by the smell of palm oil and memories of who she used to be. A girl who believed in justice. In right and wrong. In clear lines that shouldn't be crossed. Now all her lines were blurred. All her certainties had dissolved. And the only thing she was sure of was that when Yoongi called, and he would call, she would go to him. Every time. Without question. Without hesitation. Because Samuel was wrong about one thing. This wasn't ownership. This was worse. This was choice. This was her walking into the darkness with eyes wide open and pulse racing and heart singing yes, 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 even as her mind screamed run. The call came that night. Not from Yoongi. From Taeyoung. Get to the Shilla Hotel. Room 1804. Now. What happened? Is Yoongi? Just get here. Fast. She ran. Didn't tell her father, didn't change clothes, just ran into the street and hailed the first taxi she saw. The driver complained about her destination but moved when she threw money at him. 20 minutes later, she was in the elevator of Seoul's most exclusive hotel, her reflection in the mirrored walls showing someone wild-eyed and terrified. Room 1804 was at the end of a hushed hallway. She knocked once and Taeyoung opened the door immediately. His face was grim. Behind him she could see destruction. Furniture overturned. Lamps shattered. And in the center of it all Yoongi sitting on the floor with his back against the bed. Blood running from a cut above his eye. What happened? She pushed past Taeyoung, dropping to her knees beside Yoongi. Who did this? He did it to himself, Taeyoung said quietly. The meeting went bad. The war I mentioned? It's starting. And it's starting because the other family found out about you. The words hit like a physical blow. What? Yoongi finally looked up, and his eyes were wild with something between rage and despair. Park Jimin. He runs the organization in Busan. We've had an uneasy peace for years. But someone told him about you. About us. He came to the meeting with pictures. Of you leaving my building this morning. Of us at the restaurant. He stopped, his hands clenching into fists. He said I'm weak now. Compromised. That I'm making decisions with my dick instead of my brain. So you destroyed a hotel room? So I broke his jaw and 3 of his ribs before Taeyoung pulled me off. Yoongi's laugh was ugly. I proved his point, didn't I? Proved that you make me reckless. Make me violent. Make me everything I can't afford to be. She reached for his face but he caught her wrist, holding her away. Don't touch me when I'm like this. When I can still feel his blood on my hands and want to go back for more. I don't care. You should. But he pulled her closer anyway, buried his face in her neck. She could feel him shaking. I'm losing control. Everything I've built, everything I've worked for. It's crumbling because I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop needing you. And now people know. Now they're going to use you against me. Then let me go. End the contract. I'll disappear. No. The word was absolute. Final. If you disappear, they'll find you to hurt me. The only way you're safe is if you're close enough for me to protect. Or if I leave Seoul entirely. Leave Korea. Go back to Lagos. His arms tightened around her until she could barely breathe. Don't even say it. Don't even think it. Yoongi. I can't lose you. His voice cracked. I know I should let you go. I know keeping you near me is selfish and dangerous and possibly suicidal. But I can't. I've lost everyone I ever loved. My mother. My father. Every friend I had before this life. I can't lose you too. This was the truth of him. Not the cold crime lord or the calculating strategist. This. A man who'd been forced to choose survival over humanity so many times that he'd forgotten how to be both. A man who'd found something worth protecting and would burn the world to keep it. You're not going to lose me, Zara said, even though she had no right to promise that. We'll figure this out. How? Park Jimin wants a war. He's going to use you to justify it. He'll say I'm unstable, that I'm putting the whole underground at risk because I'm thinking with my heart. And he's right. I am unstable. I am a risk. Because of you. She pulled back enough to look at him. Then use it. Use the fact that everyone thinks you're compromised. Make them underestimate you. What? They think you're weak because you care about me. So let them think that. Let them believe you're distracted and emotional. Then hit them when they're not expecting it. A slow smile spread across Yoongi's bloodied face. You're brilliant. You're absolutely brilliant. He kissed her hard. And terrifying. And perfect. So what do? We make them believe the lie. You become my obvious weakness. My Achilles heel. They'll target you, try to use you against me. But you'll be ready. Because you're not just some civilian I'm sleeping with. You're an operative. You're smart and capable, and you've been training in my world for 3 months. You want to use me as bait. I want to use us as a weapon. We play up the romance. Make it obvious. Make it impossible to miss. They'll think they know how to break me. But they won't see you coming. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was probably going to get them both killed. But looking at Yoongi's face, seeing the hope and hunger and desperate need written there, she couldn't say no. Okay. We do this together. Together, he agreed. Then softer. I love you. I know I shouldn't. I know it's too soon and too complicated and too everything. But I love you, Zara Okonkwo. And I'm going to burn down anyone who tries to take you from me. She should have been horrified by the violence in those words. Instead, she felt cherished, protected, claimed in ways that went deeper than possession. I love you too, she whispered. God help us both. They kissed in the ruins of the hotel room while Taeyong made phone calls and arranged cleanup and sent messages to allies and enemies alike. The war was starting. But for the first time since this began, Zara felt like she wasn't just surviving Yoongi's world. She was becoming part of it. For better or worse. For love or destruction. For 4 more months or forever, whichever came first. And that was the most terrifying, exhilarating thing she'd ever felt. The next 2 weeks were a carefully choreographed performance. Yoongi took Zara to every meeting, every negotiation, every display of power. He touched her constantly. A hand on her lower back, fingers intertwined with hers, possessive kisses that lingered too long to be appropriate. To the outside world he looked besotted, distracted, weak. Seoul's underground watched and whispered and sharpened their knives. Park Jimin made the first real move on a Wednesday night. Zara was alone, deliberately alone, walking back from a late dinner in Itaewon. Yoongi had men following her from a distance, but they were invisible, professional. To anyone watching, she looked vulnerable. Easy prey. The van pulled up beside her so smoothly she almost didn't register it as a threat. Then the door slid open and hands reached out, grabbing her arms, yanking her inside. She fought, had to make it look real, but let them overpower her. Let them bind her wrists with zip ties and throw a hood over her head. Let them think they'd won. In the darkness under the hood, she smiled. They drove for 30 minutes. When they finally pulled her out, she stumbled convincingly, playing up her fear. The hood came off in a dimly lit warehouse that smelled like fish and rust. Park Jimin stood in front of her, beautiful in that delicate way some Korean men were, with a jaw still swollen from where Yoongi had broken it. "Miss Okonkwo," he said in accented English, "I apologize for the rough treatment, but you've become something of a problem. I'm not anyone's problem. I'm just trying to survive." Surviving? He circled her slowly. Is that what you call sleeping with Min Yoongi? Is that survival? Or ambition? It's complicated. I'm sure it is. Let me uncomplicate it for you. He stopped directly in front of her. Yoongi is losing his edge. He used to be the smartest man in Seoul. Cold. Calculating. Impossible to predict because he never let emotion cloud his judgment. Then you arrived and suddenly he's starting wars over disrespect. Breaking my jaw at peace talks. Making decisions that benefit you instead of his organization. That's not my fault. Isn't it? You're the poison in his ear. The weakness everyone can see. He leaned closer. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to send Yoongi a picture of you here tied up scared. He's going to come running to save you. And when he does, when he walks into my territory alone and angry and stupid with love, I'm going to kill him. Then you and I are going to have a conversation about how Seoul's underground operates without the Min family. Zara kept her expression neutral, frightened. You're going to start a bloodbath. No. I'm going to end one. Yoongi's people will fall in line once he's dead. They're loyal but they're not suicidal. And you. His hand came up to touch her face, and she had to force herself not to flinch away. You're going to help me convince them. The grieving girlfriend, devastated by his death, asking everyone to accept the new order. It'll be beautiful. And if I refuse? His smile was cold. Then you die too. But slower. More painfully. After my men have had their fun. He stepped back, pulled out his phone. Smile for the camera, Miss Okonkwo. The phone flashed. Once. Twice. 3 times. Pictures of her bound and hooded and surrounded by Jimin's men. Proof of life. Bait for the trap. Jimin sent the photos with a message. Come alone. Pier 7 Busan Harbor. You have 2 hours. Then they waited. Zara on the floor, wrist still bound, hood back over her head. Jimin's men standing guard, weapons ready. The tension in the warehouse building like pressure before an explosion. Except they weren't waiting for Yoongi to walk into a trap. They were waiting for the trap to spring on them. 1 hour and 47 minutes later, the warehouse lights went out. Total darkness. Then gunfire. Shouting. The sound of bodies hitting the floor. Zara dropped flat, making herself small, trusting that Yoongi's people knew exactly where she was. The lights came back on 30 seconds later. Half of Jimin's men were down. The others had their hands up, surrounded by Yoongi's forces. Taeyong was cutting the zip ties from Zara's wrists. And Yoongi stood in the center of the warehouse with a gun pressed to Park Jimin's temple. You made a mistake, Yoongi said quietly. You thought I'd come alone. You thought I'd be emotional. Reckless. Easy to kill. He pressed the gun harder and Jimin winced. But I didn't come alone. I brought 30 men. We've been surrounding this warehouse since before you grabbed her. The only reason you're still breathing is because I wanted you to feel what it's like to lose. This isn't over, Jimin gasped. You can't kill me without starting a war with Busan. I'm not going to kill you. That would be too quick. Too merciful. Yoongi removed the gun from Jimin's head. I'm going to destroy everything you've built. Your clubs. Your shipping operations. Your alliances. By the time I'm done, your own people will be begging me to take over. And you're going to watch it happen. He turned to Zara, and his expression shifted from cold fury to something achingly tender. Are you hurt? No. I'm fine. He touched you. It wasn't a question. Yoongi had been watching through the camera she wore, sewn into her clothes, broadcasting everything. He put his hands on your face. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. He turned back to Jimin. You touched what's mine. That's not something I forgive. The gunshot was shockingly loud in the enclosed space. Jimin screamed, crumpling to the ground, clutching his shattered kneecap. Yoongi's expression never changed. Take him to a hospital, Yoongi ordered his men. Make sure he survives. I want him alive to see what comes next. He held out his hand to Zara. "Let's go home." She took his hand and let him lead her out of the warehouse, stepping over bodies and blood, into the clean night air. The Mercedes was waiting, Taeyong already in the driver's seat. They got in the back and Yoongi immediately pulled her into his lap, his hands running over her body like he was checking for injuries he might have missed. "Did they hurt you?" he asked again, his voice rough. "No. I told you I'm fine. You let them take you. You let them put their hands on you, tie you up, terrify you. All part of the plan." He buried his face in her neck. "I hated every second of it. Watching through that camera, seeing him touch you, not being able to stop it immediately. It took everything I had not to storm in the moment they grabbed you. But you didn't. Because you trusted me to handle it. I trusted the plan. But I didn't trust that I wouldn't lose my mind if something went wrong." He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were wet. "I can't do that again. Can't use you as bait. Can't watch you put yourself in danger for me. That's not your choice. This is my life now too. My fight. No. It's my fight. You're just caught in it. I'm not caught in anything. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing us." She framed his face with her hands. "You don't get to protect me from everything. Sometimes I protect you. That's how this works." He kissed her desperately, like she might disappear if he let go. "I love you so much it's killing me. Do you understand that? It's actually killing me. Every day I wake up and think about what would happen if I lost you, and I can't breathe. I can't think. I can barely function. You're not going to lose me. You say that like it's a promise you can keep. Like the world I live in respects promises." His hands tightened on her waist. Park Jimin was right about one thing. "I am weak now. I make decisions based on what keeps you safe instead of what's smart. I start wars because someone disrespected you. I'm becoming the thing I swore I'd never be. A man compromised by love. And I'm becoming someone who watches people get shot and feels nothing. Someone who uses herself as bait in gang wars. Someone who loves a criminal and calls it destiny." She laughed, the sound brittle. "We're both compromised. We're both changed. Maybe that's what happens when two people collide like we did. Maybe there's no walking away unchanged." Yoongi was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on her hip bone. "2 more months. Then your contract is up." "I know. I'm not letting you go. I know that too. So what happens? How does this end?" She didn't have an answer. Because there were only 2 ways this could end. With her trapped in his world forever, or with one of them dead. There was no clean exit. No happily ever after where she walked away whole, and he let her go smiling. They were too tangled now. Too deep. Too in love with each other's darkness. "It doesn't end," she said finally. "We just keep going until we can't anymore." He pulled her down into another kiss, and this one tasted like resignation. Like acceptance. Like 2 people acknowledging they were both drowning and deciding that drowning together was better than surviving alone. When they got back to Seoul, the war Yoongi promised began in earnest. Jimin's operations fell like dominoes. His club shut down by mysterious health violations. His shipments seized by customs officials who'd suddenly remembered their job. His allies approached with better offers, better terms, better protection. Within a week, half his organization had switched sides. Within 2 weeks, Busan's underground was in chaos. And through it all, Yoongi kept Zara close. Not hidden anymore. Front and center. A statement to everyone watching. "This is mine. Touch it and die." The risk was enormous. Every time she appeared with him, she was a target. But she was also a message. Proof that Yoongi had something worth protecting. Proof that he was human enough to love and ruthless enough to destroy anyone who threatened that love. Seoul's underground watched and recalculated. Some saw weakness. Others saw a man who'd burn the world for what mattered to him. The smart ones realized both were true, and both were dangerous. 6 weeks before her contract ended, Zara's father figured out what she was doing. She came home late again, to find him waiting in the darkened restaurant. Not cooking, not cleaning, just sitting at one of the tables with his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. "How long?" he asked in Igbo, their mother tongue, the language of home and honesty. "Papa, how long have you been working for him?" For Min Yoongi, there was no point lying. Since the beginning, since Samuel was taken, he made me a deal: 6 months of work in exchange for clearing your debt and keeping us safe. Her father made a sound like something breaking. 6 months? You sold yourself for 6 months. I saved us. We were drowning, Papa. Those men would have killed Samuel, would have burned the restaurant with us inside. I did what I had to do. By becoming a criminal? By sleeping with the man who... He stopped, couldn't finish. I see the way you look at him. The way you smell like expensive cologne when you come home. The marks on your neck you try to hide. You're not just working for him. You love him. The accusation hung in the air. Zara wanted to deny it. Wanted to explain that it was more complicated than love, deeper than desire, darker than anything her father could imagine. But what came out was simpler. More true. Yes, I love him. Her father stood, and she'd never seen him look so old, so defeated. Your mother would be ashamed. I'm ashamed. We didn't come to Seoul for this. We came for a fresh start. A clean life. And you've thrown it away for a gangster. He's more than that. No, Zara. He's not. He's exactly what he appears to be. A criminal who destroys lives for profit. And now he's destroyed yours. Destroyed our family. Our family is alive because of him. Our family is corrupt because of him. Your brother won't talk to you. I can barely look at you. And you don't even care because you're so blinded by whatever this is, that you can't see what you've become. She felt tears pricking her eyes but refused to let them fall. I'm surviving. I'm protecting us. I'm doing what you couldn't do. It was a low blow. She knew at the moment the words left her mouth. Her father flinched like she'd struck him. Get out, he said quietly. Papa, get out. If you want to be Min Yoongi's woman, if you want that life, then go live it. But don't bring it into my home. Don't make your brother watch you destroy yourself. His voice broke. Don't make me watch you become someone I don't recognize. She left, packed a bag, walked out into the Seoul night, and didn't look back even though every step felt like tearing herself in half. She called Yoongi from a convenience store, her voice shaking. Can I stay with you? Of course. Always. What happened? My father knows. About us. About everything. I'll send Taeyong. I'm already on my way. She took a taxi to his building, rode the elevator to the penthouse, and fell into his arms the moment the door opened. He held her while she cried, didn't ask questions, didn't offer empty reassurances. Just held her like she was something precious and breakable that he'd fight the world to protect. I can't go back, she said eventually. He told me to leave. Then stay here. With me. For however long you need. Yoongi. I mean it. This is your home now if you want it. 6 weeks or 6 years or forever. Whatever you need. She looked around the sterile penthouse that had started to feel less empty now. Her books on his coffee table. Her scarf draped over his chair. Evidence of her presence in his space. Small invasions that he'd not only allowed but encouraged. What if I can never go back? What if my family never forgives me? Then we build a new family. You meet Taeyong, everyone who matters. You're not alone, Zara. You're never going to be alone again. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like she was being consumed. Like she was disappearing into Yoongi's life so completely that there'd be nothing left of the girl who arrived in Seoul 6 months ago. That girl was already gone. Had died slowly, piece by piece, starting the night she got into Yoongi's car and ending now, in this penthouse, choosing him over everything else. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? That I've lost myself. That I've become someone I don't recognize. That I've traded one kind of prison for another. He pulled back to look at her, his expression serious. Have I ever made you do something you didn't want to do? Have I ever forced you to stay? No. Then you haven't lost yourself. You've found a different version of yourself. Darker maybe. More complicated. But still you. Still the woman who looked at me like she wanted to watch me burn. Still the woman who walked into danger to protect her family. Still Zara. How do you know? Because I've been watching you become this person for 6 months. And every step of the way you chose it. You chose the danger. The darkness. Me. That's not losing yourself. That's finding out who you really are when the safe options are taken away. He was right. She hated that he was right. Because it meant she couldn't blame him for what she'd become. Couldn't make him the villain of her story when she'd walked into his world with eyes open and hands reaching. She'd chosen this. Every step. Every kiss. Every moral compromise. It was all her. Make me forget, she said. Just for tonight. Make me forget everything except us. He did. Carried her to bed and made love to her with a tenderness that bordered on worship. Touched her like she was holy. Whispered promises in Korean and English and the language of skin on skin that needed no translation. And for a few hours she forgot that she'd lost her family. Forgot that she was living with a criminal. Forgot everything except the way he made her feel, wanted, needed, essential as air. In the morning, reality returned with daylight. Messages on her phone from Samuel, begging her to come home. From her father, apologizing but standing firm. From a life she could return to if she just walked away from Yoongi. She deleted them all. Turned off her phone. Stayed in bed with the man who'd ruined her and saved her in equal measure. 6 weeks, Yoongi said, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. Then your contract is up. Then you're free to leave. I don't want to leave. You say that now. But 6 weeks is a long time. Things might change. You might realize this isn't the life you want. She turned to face him, seeing the fear he was trying to hide. Are you trying to convince me to go? I'm trying to give you options. I'm trying not to be the kind of man who traps someone with love and calls it destiny. He cupped her face. I want you to stay. God, I want you to stay so badly it's eating me alive. But I want you to choose it. Really choose it. Not because you have nowhere else to go, or because you feel obligated. And if I choose to stay, what then? What does that look like? It looks like this. You and me, building something that's ours. Maybe you keep working with me. Maybe you don't. Maybe we get married. Maybe we don't. Maybe we stay in Seoul, or maybe we disappear to some island where no one knows our names. I don't care about the details as long as you're there. Marriage. He'd said it so casually, like it was an obvious option. Like binding himself to her forever was something he'd already decided. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel anchored. Safe. Like she'd finally found something solid to hold on to in the chaos. Ask me, she said. What? Ask me to marry you. Right now. No ring, no planning, no waiting. Just ask me. He stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Zara. You said you wanted me to choose. So let me choose. Ask me. His hands were shaking as he pulled her closer. Marry me. Stay with me. Build a life with me even though it's going to be complicated and dangerous and probably insane. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it. Yes. The word hung in the air between them. Simple. Absolute. A vow that meant more than any contract. Yes, he repeated like he couldn't believe it. Yes. I'll marry you. I'll stay. I choose this. I choose you. I choose us, whatever that looks like. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, and she could taste salt. Didn't know if it was his tears or hers or both. When they finally broke apart, he was laughing. The sound bright and young and full of something that looked dangerously close to hope. We're crazy, he said. Completely insane, she agreed. Your family will never forgive us. Probably not. Seoul's underground will say I've completely lost it. That I've let a woman ruin me. Haven't you though? Absolutely. Spectacularly. And I've never been happier. He pulled her on top of him, hands spanning her waist. When? How soon can we do this? Are you serious? You want to actually get married? I just proposed to you in bed at 7 in the morning with no ring and no plan. Does that sound like I'm not serious? I want to marry you tomorrow if possible. Next week at the latest. Before you change your mind. Before the universe decides we've had enough happiness and needs to balance the scales. She laughed, the sound surprising her. When was the last time she'd laughed like this? Pure. Joyful. Uncomplicated by fear or violence or moral ambiguity. Okay. Soon. As soon as we can arrange it. I'll call my lawyer today. We'll need documents, but I can expedite things. 2 weeks. 3 at most. He was already planning, his mind racing ahead. Small ceremony. Just us and a few witnesses. Nothing elaborate. Nothing that puts a target on our backs bigger than the one already there. Romantic. I'll give you romantic. I'll give you everything. Just say you mean it. Say you're not going to wake up tomorrow and realize this was temporary insanity. I mean it. This is probably insane. This is definitely the worst decision I've ever made. But I mean it. Every word. They spent the day in bed, alternating between making love and making plans and making promises they weren't sure they could keep but swore to try. By evening, Zara felt like she'd stepped into an alternate universe where happy endings were possible, where love could conquer violence and darkness could be transformed into light through sheer force of will. She should have known it couldn't last. The knock came at 10 p.m. Yoongi answered the door to find Taeyong standing there, his expression grave. We have a problem. Can it wait until morning? No, boss. It can't. Taeyong's eyes flicked to Zara, then back to Yoongi. It's about her father. And her brother. Everything inside Zara went cold. What happened? They've been taken. 2 hours ago, grabbed from the restaurant. We just got word. Taken by who? Yoongi was already moving, pulling on clothes, his voice sharp as a blade. The Chun family. The ones you thought you'd neutralized. Apparently they regrouped. And they want revenge. The message came 10 minutes later. Video sent to Yoongi's phone. Zara's father and Samuel, tied to chairs in some anonymous room, bruised but alive. A voice off camera speaking in Mandarin accented Korean. You took something from us. Now we take something from you. The girl's family for Min Yoongi's life. You have 24 hours. Come alone or they die. Zara watched the video with a strange sense of detachment. This was her fault. Her choice to stay with Yoongi, to love him, to build a future with him. And now her family would pay for it. Her father's disappointed face. Samuel's anger. All of it justified. All of it prophetic. I'm going, Yoongi said, already moving toward his weapons cabinet. No. Zara grabbed his arm. That's exactly what they want. You walk into that, you die. Then they kill my family anyway. So what do you suggest? I go. I trade myself for them. They want revenge on you? I'm your weakness. I'm what they can use against you. Let me trade myself for my father and brother. Absolutely not. It's the only move that makes sense. I said no. Yoongi's voice was thunder, his eyes wild. I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself. I'm not letting them touch you. I'll burn down every Chun family operation from here to Beijing before I let you walk into that. Then my family dies. The words echoed in the expensive penthouse. The truth they both knew but hadn't wanted to say. There was no clean solution. No way to save everyone. Someone had to lose. Someone had to die. It was just a question of who. There has to be another way, Yoongi said, but his voice had lost its certainty. There isn't. You know there isn't. Zara took his hands, feeling them shake in hers. This is what I choose. My family's lives for mine. Just like you chose to clear their debt with my 6 months. We trade, Yoongi. That's what we do in this world. I can't lose you. And I can't let them die because of me. Because of us. She pulled him close, breathing in his scent, trying to memorize everything about this moment. 24 hours. That's what they said. So you have 24 hours to find them. To plan a rescue. To do what you do best. And if I can't? If I fail? Then you let me go. You let me make this trade. And you promise me something. Anything. You promise me that you'll move on. That you won't destroy yourself trying to get revenge. That you'll let me be the price that's paid and you'll keep living. She felt tears on her cheeks now. Promise me, Yoongi. Promise me you'll survive this. He pulled her into a kiss that tasted like goodbye. Like endings and beginnings and all the what-ifs they'd never get to explore. When he pulled back, his eyes were dry but devastated. I promise. But it's not going to come to that. I'm going to find them. I'm going to save your family. And then we're getting married and disappearing to somewhere these bastards can't find us. Okay. Then we have work to do. Don't subscribe if you need guarantees. If you need to know that love conquers all and everyone makes it out alive and justice prevails. Because this isn't that story. This is the story of two people trying to hold on to each other, while the world burns around them. Of choices that have no right answer. Of love that's equal parts salvation and destruction. But if you're still here, still watching, still hoping that somehow they find a way through the darkness, then maybe you understand something the rest of the world doesn't. Maybe you know that sometimes the only happy ending is surviving long enough to fight another day. Your choice. Always your choice. The next 23 hours were a masterclass in controlled chaos. Yoongi mobilized every resource he had. Every informant, every ally, every person who owed him a favor. The Chun family had made a mistake by giving them a deadline. It meant they had to keep Zara's family somewhere secure. Somewhere they could produce them on demand. That narrowed the possibilities. Zara worked alongside him, using everything she'd learned in 6 months of navigating Seoul's underground. She called contacts in the Chinese community, played on sympathies, offered money and promises and anything that might yield information. She became someone else entirely. Cold, calculating, ruthless in pursuit of her goal. She'd changed so much, become so much of what Yoongi's world demanded, that she barely recognized herself. At hour 21 they got a break. A warehouse in Incheon near the port. Chun family owned it through 3 shell companies, thought it was safe. Yoongi gathered 20 of his best men. Weapons. Plans. Contingencies for when the plans failed. Zara insisted on coming. Yoongi insisted she didn't. They compromised. She'd be in a vehicle nearby with Taeyong, ready to intervene if needed but not in the initial assault. If this goes wrong, Yoongi started. It won't. But if it does, if I don't come back, you take Taeyong and you disappear. You forget about me. You forget about Seoul. You go live the life you should have had before I dragged you into my world. That's not happening. Zara, you're coming back. You're going to save my family. Then we're getting married. Then we're building that life you promised. Those are the only options I'm accepting. He kissed her then in front of his men, in front of Taeyong, in front of everyone. Kissed her like she was the only thing keeping him human. Like she was the reason he'd survived this long and the reason he couldn't afford to die today. I love you, he said against her mouth. I know. Come back to me anyway. The assault happened exactly at hour 24. Yoongi's men hit the warehouse from 3 sides, overwhelming the guards before they could mount a real defense. But the Chun family had expected something. Had prepared. The firefight was brief and brutal. Gunfire. Shouting. The smell of smoke and blood. Zara watched from the vehicle, every muscle tense, counting seconds and praying to God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Taeyong sat beside her, one hand on his weapon, ready to move if things went wrong. Then her phone rang. Yoongi's number. She answered with shaking hands. We have them. Your father and Samuel. They're alive. The relief was so powerful she thought she might pass out. Are they hurt? Your father has some bruising. Samuel's nose might be broken. But they're alive. They're safe. A pause. There's a problem though. What problem? The Chun family head is here. Chun Wei himself. He's demanding to speak with you. Says he won't surrender without hearing from the woman who destroyed his operations. Put him on. Zara. Put him on, Yoongi. The line crackled. Then a new voice, older, speaking in perfect English. Miss Okonkwo. You've been quite troublesome. You kidnapped my family. You destroyed mine. My business in Seoul. My alliances. My reputation. All because Min Yoongi decided you were worth burning bridges for. Chun Wei sounded almost amused. Tell me, was it worth it? This love that's cost so many people so much. Zara looked at Taeyong, at the warehouse where her family was being rescued, at the phone in her hand. Yes, it was worth it. Interesting. Most people, when faced with the consequences of their passion, recant. Claim it was a mistake. Beg for forgiveness. But you own it. Even knowing what it's cost. I own it. All of it. Every choice I made that led here. Then you understand, Chun Wei said quietly, why I must make you pay for those choices. Your family is safe. Min Yoongi has won this round. But you and I, Miss Okonkwo, we're not finished. One day, when you're not expecting it, I will collect the debt you've accrued. That is my promise to you. The line went dead. A threat and a reprieve rolled into one. Zara should have been terrified. Instead, she felt oddly calm. Prepared. Like she'd been waiting for this moment since the day she first got into Yoongi's car. We need to leave, Taeyong said. Now. They drove to the warehouse. Zara got out and ran inside, past the bodies and the bullet holes and the evidence of violence, straight to where her father and Samuel sat being untied by Yoongi's men. She fell to her knees in front of them, hands reaching out, needing to touch them to believe they were real. Papa! Samuel! I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Her father pulled her into a hug, and she felt his tears on her hair. You saved us. You and... He looked up at Yoongi, who stood a respectful distance away. And him. I'm sorry, Yoongi said quietly. This is my fault. My enemies. My world. You shouldn't have been dragged into it. Samuel stood, his face swollen and angry. But instead of yelling, instead of accusations, he walked up to Yoongi and held out his hand. Thank you. For coming for us. For saving us. Yoongi looked at the offered hand like it might be a trap. Then he took it, shook it once. I'll make sure this never happens again. How? By getting out of this life? By leaving Seoul? Samuel turned to Zara. Or by making sure my sister has protection for the rest of her life, because she's choosing to stay with you? The question hung in the air. Zara stood, moving to stand beside Yoongi, their hands finding each other automatically. I'm staying. I love him. I'm going to marry him. And I need you to accept that, even if you can't understand it. Her father made a broken sound. Zara, I know you're disappointed. I know this isn't what you wanted for me, but it's what I want. It's who I choose. And I'm asking you to try to accept it. To stay in my life even if you can't approve of my choices. Paul Okonkwo looked at his daughter for a long moment. Saw the woman she'd become. Saw the man she'd chosen. Saw the life she was building in the ruins of the one he'd imagined for her. Finally he nodded. I don't like it. I'll probably never like it. But you're my daughter. And I'm not losing you completely just because I disagree with your choices. It wasn't acceptance. But it was a start. It was enough. They spent the next hour at a hospital, getting Samuel's nose set and her father's ribs checked for breaks. The doctors asked what happened. Yoongi spun a story about a robbery at the restaurant, gave the police a statement that was mostly lies, and paid enough money to make sure no one looked too closely at the inconsistencies. By the time they left, dawn was breaking over Seoul. The city was waking up, oblivious to the violence that had played out in the shadows. Yoongi drove them all back to the restaurant, helped Paul inside, made sure Samuel was settled. Then he turned to Zara. Come home with me. Get some rest. Your family is safe. We can breathe for a minute. But she was looking at her father's face, at the careful way Samuel was holding himself, at the restaurant that had become a target because of her choices. I should stay. They need me. They need rest. They need space to process what happened. Yoongi's voice was gentle. And you need to not martyr yourself for choices you've already made. Her father spoke up from where he sat, exhausted. Go, Zara. We'll be fine. Your young man is right, we need time. And you. He gestured at her, at the blood on her clothes that wasn't hers, at the hardness in her eyes that hadn't been there 6 months ago. You need to figure out who you are now. What you're becoming. So she went. Back to the penthouse, into the elevator, up to the sky. Yoongi followed silently, giving her space to feel everything she'd been holding back. When the door closed behind them, she finally let herself break. She cried for the girl she'd been, for the family she'd endangered, for the life she'd chosen that came with prices she was still learning to pay. Yoongi held her through it all, didn't try to fix it or make it better, just held her while she shattered and slowly, piece by piece, put herself back together. Chun-Wei promised to come for me, she said eventually, her voice raw. One day when I'm not expecting it. He said I owe a debt. I won't let him touch you. You can't stop everything. You can't protect me from every consequence. She pulled back to look at him. This is the life now, isn't it? Always watching. Always waiting. Always knowing that the next threat could come from anywhere. Yes. That's what it means to be with me. That's the truth of my world. His hands framed her face. If you want out, if this is too much, tell me now. Before we go any further. Before you bind yourself to me in ways that can't be undone. She thought about it. Really thought about it. Imagine walking away, going back to some version of normal, building a life that didn't include violence and threats and love that felt like possession. It should have been appealing. It should have been the obvious choice. Instead, it felt like death. Like cutting off a limb. Like losing the only person who'd ever really seen her. All of her, the darkness and light together, and wanted her anyway. I don't want out. I want in. All the way. Whatever that looks like. Marriage. That's what it looks like. Legal and binding and permanent. My name. My protection. My life. He paused. My enemies. My demons. My whole complicated, dangerous world. That's what you're signing up for. I know. I want it anyway. You're insane. Completely. She kissed him softly. We're insane together. That's what makes this work. They got married 3 weeks later. Not a big ceremony. Just them, Taeyong, and a handful of Yoongi's most trusted people. Zara wore a simple white dress she'd bought the day before. Yoongi wore a black suit that probably cost more than her father's monthly revenue. They exchanged vows in Korean and English, promised things they weren't sure they could keep but would die trying. Her family didn't come. Paul had sent his blessing through Samuel, but his disappointment was palpable even in absence. Samuel sent a text. I hope you know what you're doing. I hope he's worth it. He was. He wasn't. He was everything and nothing she'd expected. He was the worst decision she'd ever made and the only one that mattered. When Yoongi kissed her at the end of the ceremony, when he slid the ring onto her finger, platinum, simple, expensive, she felt the last door close on her old life. She was Mrs. Min now, or Min Zara as Korean naming conventions would have it. She belonged to this world irrevocably, for better or worse, in violence and in rare moments of peace, until death or betrayal tore them apart. I love you, Yoongi whispered against her mouth. My wife. My partner. My everything. I love you too. My husband. My choice. My fate. They honeymooned for exactly 2 days before reality crashed back in. A meeting that couldn't be postponed. An alliance that needed shoring up. Seoul's underground didn't stop moving just because Yoongi had gotten married. If anything, the marriage made him more of a target. Proof that he had something to lose. Something that could be leveraged. Zara adapted. She'd been adapting for 6 months. What was a lifetime more? She learned the business inside and out. Not just the surface operations Yoongi had let her see before, but the deep structures. The money flows. The political connections. The way power really worked in Seoul's shadows. She became invaluable. Not just as Yoongi's wife, but as his partner in truth. His strategist. His translator between worlds. She was good at it. Better than good. She had insights he'd never considered. Connections in communities he couldn't access. A ruthlessness that matched his own because she'd learned from the best. 6 months became a year. A year became 2. They bought a house outside Seoul. Something with walls and security and space to breathe. They talked about children sometimes late at night, then shelved the conversation because how do you bring life into a world built on death? Zara's relationship with her family remained strained. She saw them monthly, awkward dinners where they talked around the elephant in the room. Samuel graduated high school, got into university. Her father's restaurant thrived, partly because of its good food and partly because everyone knew whose family owned it. Protection by association. Safety purchase with Zara's choices. And through it all, Chun Wei's promise hung over them like a sword. One day, when you're not expecting it, I will collect. That day came on a Tuesday morning in April, 3 years after Zara had first gotten into Yoongi's car. She was at a cafe in Gangnam, meeting with a contact when the car pulled up. Professional. Quiet. 3 men got out and walked straight to her table. She recognized them instantly, Chun family. Her hand moved toward her phone, toward the panic button Yoongi had installed, but one of the men was faster. Mrs. Min Chun Wei would like a word. Please don't make this difficult. She could scream, could fight, could try to run, but there were civilians everywhere, and she'd learned enough in 3 years to know that making a scene would just get innocent people hurt. So she stood, left money on the table, and walked to the car with her head high. They drove for an hour. Out of Seoul, into the countryside, to a traditional hanok house that probably cost millions. Chun Wei was waiting on the veranda, older than she remembered, thinner, with the look of someone who'd been sick. Cancer, she guessed. The kind that gave you a timeline. Mrs. Min. Thank you for coming. I didn't have much choice. No. I suppose you didn't. He gestured to a seat. Please. We have much to discuss and I have less time than I'd like. She sat, every muscle tense, waiting for the trap to spring. If you're going to kill me, just do it. Don't bore me with villain speeches first. He laughed, the sound turning into a cough. Kill you? No, Mrs. Min. I promised I would collect a debt. I never said the payment was your life. Then what do you want? I'm dying. 6 months, maybe a year. And my organization is in chaos. My sons are idiots. My lieutenants are circling like sharks. When I die, everything I built will tear itself apart. He looked at her with sharp eyes. Unless someone strong enough steps in. Someone who understands both my world and your husband's world. Someone who could unite them. You want me to take over your organization? I want you to merge our organizations. Chun family and Min family. No more rivalry. No more war. One power structure controlling both Seoul and the Chinese operations. It's what should have happened years ago, but pride got in the way. Your marriage to Min Yoongi makes it possible now. Zara stared at him, mind racing. Yoongi would never agree. Wouldn't he? His dream is consolidation. Control. An end to the constant territorial battles. This gives him that. And it gives you something too. What? Power. Real power. Not just as Min Yoongi's wife but as a leader in your own right. Co-head of the largest criminal organization in South Korea. That's the debt I'm collecting, Mrs. Min. Not your death. Your ambition. It was brilliant and terrible. A trap disguised as an opportunity. If she said yes, she'd be binding herself even deeper into this world. Becoming not just complicit but actively leading. If she said no, Chun Wei would find another way to destabilize things, and the war would start again and more people would die. I need to talk to my husband. Of course. You have 1 week. After that, I make other arrangements. Messier arrangements. Arrangements that will cost many lives on both sides. He stood, preparing to leave. I chose you for this, Mrs. Min. Not your husband. Because I've watched you these 3 years. Watched you transform from a frightened girl into something remarkable. Something ruthless enough to survive and compassionate enough to build rather than just destroy. You're wasted as Min Yoongi's shadow. This is your chance to step into the light. They drove her back to Seoul and released her 3 blocks from where they'd taken her. She walked the rest of the way home, mind churning, already planning how to present this to Yoongi. Already knowing what he'd say. Already knowing she'd convince him anyway. When she walked into their house, Yoongi was in his office working. He looked up, started to smile, then saw her expression. What happened? We need to talk. About the future. About what we're building. About how far we're willing to go. She told him everything. Chun Wei's offer. The timeline. The opportunity buried in the threat. Yoongi listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When she finished, silence filled the room like water. If we do this, he said finally, there's no going back. We become exactly what people fear. What people whisper about. The power couple who controls Seoul's entire underground. I know. Your family will never forgive you. They can rationalize you being with me. They can accept you being my wife. But this? Actively choosing to lead criminal operations? That's a line you can't uncross. I know that too. And you want to do it anyway? She met his eyes. Saw fear there. And pride. And something that looked like inevitability. I want us to stop just surviving and start actually building something. Something that lasts beyond the next threat. Chun Wei is right. Consolidation is the future. This war between families, it's wasteful. It gets people killed for nothing. But if we unite them, if we create something bigger than either family alone, we could actually make Seoul's underground safer. More controlled. Less random violence. You're rationalizing. I'm strategizing. There's a difference. He came around the desk, pulled her close. Do you know what you're becoming? Can you see it? Yes. I'm becoming powerful. I'm becoming dangerous. I'm becoming exactly what this world demands. She touched his face. And I'm doing it with you. Does that make it better or worse? I don't know anymore. I stopped being able to tell the difference between salvation and damnation where you're concerned. He kissed her hard and possessive. If we do this, we do it together. Equal partners. Co-heads. Your name next to mine on everything. That's what I want. Then let's build an empire. Let's take Chunwei's dying wish and turn it into something that outlives us both. Let's become the thing Seoul's underground fears and respects in equal measure. You're sure? No. But I've never been sure about anything involving you. That's what makes it exciting. They contacted Chunwei the next day. Accepted his offer with conditions. Full transparency, equal power sharing, protection for both families during the transition. Chunwei agreed to everything. He was dying anyway. He just wanted to know his life's work wouldn't crumble the moment he stopped breathing. The merger took 6 months to complete. 6 months of negotiations, power plays, convincing skeptical lieutenants on both sides that this was the future. Zara was brilliant at it. She spoke Korean and English and Mandarin. She understood Korean hierarchy and Chinese face culture and Nigerian directness. She could be soft or hard depending on what the situation demanded. She became indispensable. By the time Chunwei died, peacefully in his sleep, with his legacy secured, Zara and Yoongi controlled an organization that touched every illegal enterprise from Seoul to Beijing. Drugs, weapons, money laundering, protection rackets. They were powerful beyond anything either of them had imagined 3 years ago. And they were trapped by that power. Because now they had thousands of people depending on them, territories to maintain, enemies who would love to see them fall. They'd built something so big that walking away would mean watching it collapse, watching people die, watching violence consume the careful order they'd created. Zara stood on their veranda one night, looking out at Seoul's lights, and felt the weight of 3 years settle on her shoulders. She was 25 years old. She controlled half of South Korea's criminal underground. She was married to a man who would burn the world for her. She had power and money and influence beyond measure. And she would never ever be that girl who arrived in Seoul with dreams of a fresh start. Do you regret it? Yoongi asked, coming up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Which part? All of it. Any of it. The choices that led here. She thought about it. Really thought about it. About the blood on her hands, literal and metaphorical. About her father's disappointed eyes. About Samuel's distance. About the innocence she'd traded for power and the girl she'd been who had died 1,000 small deaths to become this woman. No, I don't regret it. I regret the cost sometimes. I regret the pain I've caused. But the choices themselves, the path that led to you, to us, to this life, I'd make them all again. Even knowing what you know now, especially knowing what I know now, because I know what we've built. I know what we're capable of. I know that we're stronger together than we ever were apart. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. We're monsters, Yoongi. Let's not pretend otherwise. We do terrible things for what we call good reasons. But we're monsters who love each other, who protect each other, who would tear the world apart before we let anyone separate us. And maybe that's not redemption, but it's something. He kissed her temple, gentle despite everything they'd become. I love you. More than power. More than survival. More than anything else in this world. If you wanted to walk away tomorrow, leave all this behind, I'd do it. I'd give it all up for you. I know. But I'm not asking you to. Because I don't want to walk away. This is our life. Our empire. Our legacy. And I want to see how far we can take it. How much we can build before the universe decides we've had enough. That's my wife. My partner. My empress of the underworld. She laughed, the sound slightly bitter. Is that what I am now? An empress. That's what you've always been. You just needed the crown to make it official. They stood there together, looking out at the city they controlled. The empire they'd built on choices and blood and love that tasted like darkness. 3 years. That's all it had taken for Zara Okonkwo to go from innocent immigrant to criminal queen. 3 years of choosing Yoongi over everything else. Of choosing power over peace. Of choosing love that looked like possession and calling it destiny. If you asked her if it was worth it, she'd say yes without hesitation. If you asked if she'd do it again, she'd laugh and say she never stopped doing it. Every day was a choice to stay, to build, to become more of what this world demanded. If you asked if she was happy, she'd pause. Guess happiness wasn't quite the right word. Satisfied, maybe. Fulfilled. Complete in ways she'd never imagined possible. But happy suggested contentment, and she was never content. She was always hungry for more. More power. More control. More moments with Yoongi where the rest of the world fell away, and it was just them. Just this love that had rewritten both their lives. She'd become exactly what Seoul's underground needed. What Yoongi needed. What she herself needed, though she hadn't known it when she first arrived. She'd become the woman who could love a monster and become monstrous in return. The woman who could build empires on graves and call it progress. The woman who chose darkness over light because the darkness had become home. And in the end, that was the real story. Not about redemption or corruption or good people making bad choices, but about transformation. About discovering that the person you always were was just waiting for the right circumstances to emerge. About finding someone who saw all of you, the light and the darkness together, and loved you not despite it but because of it. Zara had come to Seoul looking for a fresh start. She'd found something better and worse. She'd found herself. The real, unvarnished, morally complicated truth of who she was when all the safe options were stripped away. And she'd found Yoongi. Her husband. Her partner. Her equal in ambition and ruthlessness and love that knew no boundaries. Together, they'd built something that would be whispered about for generations. A love story that looked like a crime drama. An empire built on choices that should have destroyed them but somehow made them stronger. 3 years. That's all it took to change everything. To become someone new. To choose love that looked like possession and power that felt like purpose and a life that was equal parts beautiful and terrible. 3 years. And she'd do it all again. Every bloody, complicated, beautiful moment. Because some loves are worth becoming a monster for. Some partners are worth burning the world beside. And some empires are built not in spite of the darkness but because of it. That was their story. That was their truth. That was the life they'd chosen together, one dangerous decision at a time. And it was exactly, perfectly, terrifyingly enough. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't the kind of story where everyone learns a lesson and becomes better people. This is the story of two people who found each other in darkness and decided that was exactly where they wanted to stay. If that satisfies you, if that feels true, if you understand that sometimes the only happy ending is survival and power and love that refuses to be anything other than what it is, then maybe you've been paying attention. Maybe you've been understanding all along that this was never about redemption. It was always about choice. About becoming. About two people deciding that together, they were unstoppable. And proving it every single day. Thank you for staying. Thank you for watching them become this. Thank you for understanding that monsters can love too. And sometimes that's the most human thing about them.